Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us today to stay curious. Today, beside me is artist Doug Forrest. He is a talented pencil artist who treats pieces of art as themselves, the launch towers, the Saturn V rockets, spacesuits, and moonwalkers. And Doug has a particular passion for the Apollo era. Welcome to Stay Curious, Doug.
Thanks, Mark. It's good
Great
to be
to make you as a friend here. Your wife Hoshiko and you've been here on the Space Coast for about a week.
Yep.
Tell everybody why and what you've been enjoying.
Well, we needed a vacation, and when NASA announced the Artemis 1 launched, I basically went home and said, that's where we're going. So that's what we came for.
Well, the Artemis 1 launch, kind of on the launch pad, looks like your rendering of the Saturn V here. This is Doug Forrest's work here. IAAA is the International Association of Astronomical Artists. And we're going to talk about, I pulled a dozen pieces of his artwork. There is his website, apollo-arts.com. And Marty and I have been looking at your work, and we're very blown away by your perspectives, and you're going to tell us a little about that. And Doug just didn't do these pieces of artwork without some input from some of the astronauts involved. So you got some really good stories about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Artemis experience. Where you went out to the Saturn V launch site?
Yep. I have a friend here in Cocoa Beach who basically, when I called him to say we were coming, I mean, I wasn't expecting it. He said, "Oh, I have 2 tickets for the Banana Creek viewing." I was like, "Well, yeah, we'll go for that for sure," because I'd never been to a launch for that. I'd seen a shuttle launch once from Titusville. And that was great, but this was going to be so much closer. And as you already mentioned, this rocket kind of resembled more of it like a Saturn V, which as a kid I really wanted to see but never did live. Yeah. I saw it on TV, but from Scotland, but not from here.
Well, you do have a little Scottish accent there. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and where you're doing now.
I grew up in Glasgow in Scotland, and I was blown away by the Apollo program when it happened. It always captivated my imagination. I've been drawing, I would say, as long as I could hold a pencil. And I started out drawing airplanes. My dad and I used to go to Prestwick Airport in Scotland, and that was where I started drawing, really more than anything. I was drawing.
Did your dad draw too? Or?
No, he didn't. My dad was a civil engineer, but he wasn't artistic in that way. I was probably the most artistic in the family. My grandfather was an artist.
Well, we have one of our number one watchers of Stay Curious since the beginning is in Dundee, Scotland. Hi, Robert Law. He's enjoying a cocktail, no doubt, in the evening time up there. Probably getting a little chilly now.
I would think,
in the first weeks of September, you see autumn. You remember as a kid what it was like back then?
Actually, at this time of year, it couldn't be too bad. I mean, the nice thing is it stays light a lot longer.
Oh, yeah, but that is closer to the Arctic Circle up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you live where now? And tell us what you do for a living.
So now I live in Los Angeles. I actually work in the movie industry, or I work on TV shows nowadays, but I used to do a lot of movies. I'm a visual effects artist in the digital arm, but I originally was a cameraman doing traditional optical work. And I've been doing that since 1984.
Well, we're pleased that you found the American Space Museum. We know that you know some of our artist friends like Chris Calley out there. Tell us how you met Chris and some of these artists from the International Association of Astronomical Artists.
Well, actually, I met all of them at Space Fest in Tucson.
1996, you said, was your first Space Fest.
No, 2014.
Yeah.
2014.
Our Stay Curious watchers, a wonderful Space Fest was in the Tucson area by the Poor family, and Kim Poor and his wife put it on for years, Sally, and we hope that they watch Stay Curious once in a while. I have Kim Poor sadly passed away. I have his Pistachio Moon is one of my favorite Kim Poor paintings on one of my walls in there. So, but they had this space fest. It was a big love fest of Apollo astronauts and people, the fans, and
shuttle astronauts, mission controllers, authors. I mean, you name it, they went, and it was fantastic.
So, what artists did you meet there that impressed and had an impression on you?
Well, from the IAAA, I mean, Alan Bean was an artist, and
Astronaut Alan Bean.
Astronaut Alan Bean from Apollo 12, and I met him at the very first one I went to, just as a visitor, and he, what I did is I made up T-shirts with. I only had 2 drawings at that time, and I wasn't doing the Apollo Arts thing, but I'd done one for one person and one for myself, and. Alan saw the T-shirts and he couldn't believe they were drawings at first. He thought they were photographs, which was nice. And I'd done it as a kind of icebreaker to bring something a little new to the table to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it worked. And he suggested that I basically should get involved in the next show, the next Space Fest, which was going to be probably the next year. Mm-hmm. And so there was a blind scramble to pull as many drawings as together because they take quite a long time to do. So I managed to get enough to do a show. And
understatement, a long time to do. When you see Doug Forrest's works of art here, this is one behind us here. I don't know how you do the reverse imagery on that, but that is gorgeous. And of course, Marty Winkle, my co-producer, was way up there on top there working in the slaw. You gonna circle it for us, Marty? Yep, that's where Marty would have to go up mostly at night, right, Marty? You work the night shift and do things that was on the pad. Right there is where Marty would be inside that thing.
Yeah.
And he's been in our show. It's rocking and rolling back and forth, and and then he's got a lot of Scottish blood in him too. So he was happy to meet you here. Actually, he went to Scotland a couple years ago, right, buddy?
Yeah, if I don't have Scottish blood, I do have Irish blood.
Irish blood. Well, why were you in Scotland then?
So do I.
Okay, and he doesn't drink, so there was no Scottish whiskey in his blood either. So, well, let's, Doug. We do some space history here. I want to do a little bit today. We're going to talk about the NASA art program, and then he's going to describe some of his beautiful pictures here. But we want to not ignore one event in space history here on Stay Curious today, but also let you know that we've got this lineup the rest of the week, including Mike Leinbach, former shuttle launch director, is going to be talking Artemis realism and experience on Friday. I got a hold of Mike and said, we need someone that knows a little bit about launching human-rated rockets, and he was the last person to do that for NASA. So we're excited. Mike, always a great supporter of Stay Curious and the American Space Museum. So look forward to that on Friday. Don't know what Mike's going to be talking about. We'll see. But I do know he has mentored Charlie Blackwell Thompson, the launch director, and he's going to tell us like realism and experience. Eurocom Alex Carl is going to be here tomorrow. We've had Alex on before from his ESA headquarters in Cologne, Germany, and he's going to update us with bringing back Samantha Krista Ferretti, the ESA astronaut currently on Expedition 67. And if you missed Egyptian astronaut Sarah Sabri, Marty, she's an astronaut to me, okay? After talking to this excited, enthusiastic young lady who is the new, what we need in space. Mm-hmm. Young people like this that aren't going to be stopped, and they're going to reach their goals. Mm-hmm. And she's a suborbital astronaut with new Shepard 22 on August 4th. And she's spreading the word about that. And you got to check out her passionate story on our Stay Curious program yesterday. And for those of you, we posted this on our Facebook page. Here's the Artemis launch windows, okay, coming up in October, if they get the fix done and out to the pad. October 22nd is our Cosmic Masquerade Ball that we're going to be talking about at Beachside Hotel. I don't think they want to launch it at 6 in the morning, or 7:30 in the morning with a 7-minute window. But this is the next opportunity to launch Artemis 1 and what they call period 27 of the moon orbit around the Earth. So how about a Halloween at 3:30 on a Halloween? That might be fun. So, and we'll talk to Mike about that. Is this a reasonable, what he hears? He's retired. Mike Leinbach here Friday to talk about launching human-rated spaceships, as he launched 37 space shuttles, including the last 37. So, and we want to thank Sarah Sabry for her time and the posse that she brought with her here. We had a lot of fun after the show with all her great friends. This is a outstanding woman. She was involved, Doug, in what they call analog astronauts. She's an analog astronaut where they actually do a mission for a week on the moon and Mars, she said, in spacesuits and as much as they can on Earth, replicate that. Was that in the Netherlands or Denmark or somewhere where she went? I forget what country. In Europe she was at, that the training was.
That was down here in Melbourne.
Oh, so they did something else in Melbourne. Yeah, there was a training thing in Melbourne too. Melbourne, Florida, near us here. So threw in a picture of James Webb. It's kind of out of sequence. I wanted it before we hit Doug's photographs here. But James Webb, in 1963, created the NASA art program for other media than photography and film. And artists first time observed a mission. The first time they observed the mission was the last Mercury launch, Gordon Cooper's Phase 7, in March 15th, 1963. That was at Launch Complex 14 out of Cape Canaveral. The great James Webb, NASA's second administrator until 1968, he is holding here the lunar module, the early version of it from Grumman, the 1962 version with 5 legs and an oval round hatch there, and the lunar orbiter that orbited the moon and did the first mapping of the moon for landing sites. He created the NASA art program he let 8 artists go out and just free range.
Yeah.
You've heard about that, right?
Oh, yes.
What have you heard about as an artist? What do they talk about?
Most of it actually through Chris Kelly and his dad, Paul Kelly, who was a part of that program, along with
Robert McCall. I'll name who was part of that. Robert McCall, Mitchell Jameson, Peter Hurd, John McCoy, Lamar Dodd, Robert Shore, and of course Mr. Paul Kelly. And I want you state curious people to know those people off the tip of your tongue, because artists like Doug, obviously inspired by people like this. Paul Kelly's pencil drawings, yours, I mean, they're different. They're just so intricate. Different technique and so forth. But why? Well, and we need to we got time to campaign for to launch it in October. We need Chris Kelly out there as an artist. And Doug Forrest out there as an artist.
Definitely Doug Forrest.
And
sorry, Chris. You can come too.
And how about Ron Woods?
Out there. How do you know? I know a lot of people that would love.
But to my knowledge, no artists were welcomed invited to the Artemis press corps. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit further. But gee, come on, guys!
It's a better viewing site than the Banana Creek.
Yeah,
it's closer.
Yeah. Did you have a sketch pad with you when you got there?
I had my camera.
I'm
busy with that.
Off of that later. Yeah. Well, that's not what Paul Kelly did. He didn't. He sketched in the room.
He sketched live.
Live and the room. The suit room of Apollo 11. He was the only artist allowed in there. So James Webb, yes, that is the Webb telescope that is doing phenomenal things, named after this man who guided America to the moon and created NASA art program. So, but we celebrate, Doug, the shuttles of the month. There's 11 shuttles of the month of September, and we'll get into those shuttles next week with Hugh Harris, Terry White, Travis Thompson and Nick Thomas. We'll have them all on before the month is out to talk about some of these shuttles. But this is the launch of STS-69 in 1995, all right, 27 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This was called the Dog 2 crew, all right. They dubbed themselves the Dog crew, continuing a spirit of camaraderie that began on an earlier space flight, STS-53, when Jim Voss and Commander Dave Walker were member of the 53 crew. And they each took a dog name, and they even sported a dog crew patch with a traditional mission emblem. Okay, so believe it or not, the dog crew ate out of dog bowls before their launch. All right, left to right is Red Dog, Commander David Walker, his fourth and last flight. Cujo is the second from the left, pilot Ken Cockerell, second of 5 flights. Dogface is Jim Voss. Cockerell is actually on the right side there at the end. Jim Voss is Dogface. Pluto is Jim Newman. And you can see him on the far right. And Underdog was the rookie Michael Gernhardt. So they deployed the Wake Shield facility. Here's their dog patch. All right. They took it seriously. And just to show you, the astronauts had a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie in the shuttle program, as shown with this. But well, let's feature our guy here, Mr. Doug Forrest, to talk about your fabulous art here. Give us an idea of the inspiration with you wanting to focus on the Apollo program.
Well, as I said, I grew up watching the Apollo program with my family, and one of the things that I really, really wanted to do was actually come and see a Saturn V launch live here in Florida, which we never did. But we watched them all on TV. And the reason I did this particular picture, this is Apollo 4, which was the very first unmanned launch of a Saturn V. But it was actually also to do with the tower, which was Lot 1. And I was a part of the Save the Lot campaign to try and actually have that tower restored. It used to sit in the boneyard at the back of the industrial area here at KSC. And
do the acronym. We're talking LUT.
LUT as in Launch Umbilical Tower.
There we go. Okay.
And the mobile base, of course, that the rocket sat on, those were moved over to the shuttle program in the early 80s. And this particular tower, though, had launched Apollo 4, Apollo 8, the first round of the moon, Apollo 11, first landing, and all 3 manned Skylab launches and the Apollo Soyuz test project. So there was a lot of history tied up in this tower. And there was a group which was started by 2 Air Force officers who were stationed at the Canaveral Air Station back in, I believe it was 1980. They had seen a report in the Florida Today that it was going to be scrapped because they wanted the tower off the base to use the base for the shuttle program. Mm-hmm. But they said, no, wait, this tower has a lot of history. You know, we want to save this thing. And I had read about this. I actually found it in a book in the Los Angeles Central Library. And to cut a long story short, years later, I actually met the 2 people. One still worked for NASA at Marshall, and the other one worked for the Air Force. And they still had all the paperwork. They had done a whole campaign, and Wallace Schirra was actually involved in that original campaign too. And
was it saved?
It was not.
It was,
ultimately, it was not. They had it to the point that they got it taken down and in pieces, and it was stored at the Kennedy Space Center for 30 years. And then I came along, and I discovered this thing still existed, and I actually wrote to NASA and asked if I could go see it, and they said I could. And while I was there, I discovered that they were thinking of scrapping it. So it inspired me to write a piece for the British Interplanetary Society's magazine Spaceflight. And the whole point of that was to hopefully gain attention with other people. And I actually did start a campaign, which I was involved in all the way through to 2004 when the tower ultimately was scrapped. Unfortunately, we couldn't raise the money.
Your article was called "A Bid to Save a Modern Day Santa Maria."
Mm-hmm.
Kind of an interesting twist on that. Save the LUT, the Launch Umbilical Tower, that it just does all that. It's got all the pipes and electricity and everything on there. Well, we're sorry that remains scrapped, but it did inspire you to do some artwork. And let's look at a couple other pieces here. And you don't see somebody spending hours with a pencil doing an image like this. Why did you do that?
Well, again, this was to kind of honor the people that worked on it, like Marty.
Like we do here at the American Space Museum.
Exactly.
Honor space workers.
And that's really what it
No,
was.
I love it. I don't mean the bad. I didn't want them to think, why'd you do that? I'm going like, this is a very interesting piece of artwork.
Yeah, that was. It's called Pad Rat because
Pad Rat.
because
Okay.
the workers were known as Pad Rats. They called themselves that. And yeah, that was the whole point of that picture.
Here is another artist in this picture, and it's not Buzz Aldrin.
Ronnie Woods. Yeah, Ron was a suit tech. He went through the whole Apollo program and shuttle program, and this is him dressing Buzz Aldrin on the morning of Apollo 11, which is quite a legacy to have. And
Yes.
he's a really great watercolor painter as well, and now he paints spacesuits. He because that was his specialty, and he's brilliant, and he's a really nice guy.
I met him.
Real fun guy.
He's a snowbird. He's I think he's up in New England area.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
He's a snowbird. Can't wait for him to come down, and he'll be on Stay Curious. We're talking about Ron Woods. There on the, of course, upper left there, a young Ron Woods. And yeah, his artwork is very dramatic. Can't wait to share his artwork too.
He's great.
But he has a close-up of a glove, for example, just a glove laying on the table. All right, very, very simple subject, and it's gorgeous how he does it. But look at you here. Why did you choose this sort of composure for Buzz Aldrin?
Well, I wanted to do a series of pictures. I already had one of Neil in his suit, which I called Ready to Go. And I wanted ones where they were really more, you could see them contemplating what they were about to do. And it was a pretty serious moment. And so, it just seemed like a good subject to do.
Well, the suit tech is the star there. The astronaut is just like you said, in maybe a contemplative thought, or he has to hold still there for a minute or two while Ron Woods does his thing there, right?
Well, I really wanted to. Anything I did with Buzz, I really wanted Ron to be in it because I knew Ron, or know Ron, and I wanted him. I wanted a picture with him in it.
Not being in the suit room, you base some of the background and so forth on photographs.
Yes, actually, a lot of this is from the movie. That was the Apollo 11 movie that was recently done, where they discovered new film. And
yes, where it starts out with a panorama going over the launch complex. Oh, I love that.
In IMAX, it was incredible.
Yeah, that was one of the best ones.
Yeah.
Well, here's another gorgeous piece of artwork. Tell us about this, Doug, and your relationship with the astronaut involved here.
Well, this is Al Worden. It's called Trans-Earth, and Al was the first astronaut in the Apollo program to do the Trans-Earth EVA between the Earth and the Moon when they were coming home. This is him recovering the film canisters from the sim bay, the scientific instrument module, on the service module, which, of course, the service module burned up when the command module separated to re-enter. So they had to recover all the film that Al, as the command module pilot, had photographed over the moon while he was orbiting the moon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love a couple things about this. One is that I've had the privilege of meeting Al Worden. We called him Uncle Al, and you met him at Space Fest a few times. Quite a character up there. Let's put that picture back up there. Well, I love showing people film. When we're talking about film canisters, here's a roll of 35 millimeter Fuji 400 ISO film. because back in the 70s, everything was on this film. And they had to risk their lives to retrieve the data to bring back from the last 3 moon missions that had a science bay in that.
And actually, the thing about this is that this is 35mm film. The film that he was recovering was about this wide.
Yes.
It's actually really big. I mean, the
Yeah.
pictures are 44 inches long each.
Yeah, special to reconnaissance for other landing sites and so forth. The other thing that Mr. Al Warden would complain about was that the guys on the moon took hundreds of pictures of themselves, and he said on his spacewalk they took 1 picture of his feet.
Yes.
All right, and so I asked you, he's got the striped helmet on there, which is the commander's helmet that Dave Scott would have wore on the moon.
That's right. And I asked him about this, and he could not remember, because I told him when I was doing the drawing, I was asking for details while I was still doing it. And he said, I don't remember if I wore the commander's helmet. But I thought about it afterwards, and I actually got in touch with the author, David Woods, in Scotland. And David and I kind of went backwards and forwards, and we realized that there were only 2 of the visor assembly helmets on the flight, because of course as a command module pilot he didn't need one to fly the command module. So we realized that because Jim Irwin was standing in the hatch feeding the cable and watching the cameras, the TV cameras, he would have worn his own. So therefore Al must have worn the Commander Dave Scott's.
And you depicted that in this drawing, folks. All right.
The other funny story, actually, though, is the first thing he said to me, because I originally had the canister tethered, which it was, but floating free. And he said, oh, no. He said, no. He said, I was the first. He said, I held on to that sucker. He said, because I didn't want to lose it.
Oh, okay. Even though it was tethered, you sort of hold on.
He had a death grip on it until he got it back inside.
He actually made 2 trips out there to get 2 canisters.
Yep.
Yeah, Marty said he made 2 trips out there to get 2 canisters there. What kind of details did Al share with you about this? You to remember.
Mostly about that. The other thing that makes this picture, because it is based on other flights. I used other reference pictures because, as you said, the only picture of Al himself was of his foot.
Yeah.
And so I based it on other flights, the 16 and 17. But the one thing that makes this 15 is that the mapping camera that's what his legs are kind of coming up over, because on 15 it was still in the deployed position, because on the other flights they would pull it back down into the service module.
Okay.
And
so that structure behind him is part of the mapping camera.
Correct. And I asked him, why didn't you put it back in? And his simple answer, typical Al, it broke. That was all he said. It broke. So that was why. So that's what makes this 15.
Well, I handpicked a dozen of your beautiful pictures here, Doug Forrest, and here's another one. This has got a great story to it, folks. So tell us about this mission and your story there.
Okay, this one I got directly. This is Apollo 15 again, and I talked to Dave Scott, the commander of the mission, at one of the space fests, and I went there planning to talk to him about really more about a different picture. I actually didn't know about this, but he proceeded to tell me this story of an unplanned stop that they had on their second EVA on the moon, and where Jim Irwin had noticed that one of the rocks was green or had green elements in it, and they weren't sure if it was because of the visor color. So they said, we got to stop, because this was really the first mission where they really focused on the geology, and Dave they both were really into it. So they said, yeah, we have to stop at this one. But they had originally driven in above the rock, but they were a little worried that when they got out they might not be able to get back up to it in the bulky spacesuits, because the soil was really powdery and quite deep. So Jim had walked down to the rock where Dave had brought the car, the lunar rover, down below the rock. But when he got off, you can see it's kind of balanced on three wheels. And it actually started slipping down the hill when he got off it, because the rover was quite light on the moon, and it didn't sink into the soil.
He's on his knees holding it,
so
it
this
doesn't
is
slide.
So Jim Irwin just said, "Oh, no worries," and just kind of got down and held on to it. And this is literally him holding it from slipping down the slope. And he said to me, he says, "Well, you're an artist, Doug." He said, "I bet you could do a good picture of this." And I'm thinking, well, yeah, no kidding.
Dave Scott's telling you that.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I mean, it wasn't a commission, but I'm thinking, well, I'm definitely going to do this. So it took me ages to figure out the composition, though, because I wanted it to be an interesting, interesting picture, because it's very easy to make it look flat. And so I came up with the idea that if you were low to the ground, kind of looking up at it, that would give you the slope, and then just kind of Dutch the whole thing a little bit so that you get more of an angle of the precariousness of the whole position. And when you read about it on the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal, you can hear them talking to Mission Control, because they couldn't see them from Mission Control. There's no TV at this point. And when they're talking about the rover slipping and they're in this deep soil and they're on this hill, they're thinking, oh my God, they're on the edge of a cliff. But and Dave wrote subnotes to the journal later on, and actually he's kind of laughing about it. He said, yeah, I'd been in Mission Control on previous flights, or later flights even, where when they couldn't see what was going on and the astronauts were explaining something, the managers would be freaking out. They were starting to get really worried. But he said it really wasn't that bad. The slope was about 18 degrees, but the soil was very powdery, and they did sink into it quite a lot. So it was just a really neat story.
An awesome story, but look at this beautiful piece of artwork, folks. What a rendering! What a great perspective. There's Jim Irwin on his knees holding down the lunar rover, the first one to ever go to the moon. There's Dave Scott next to the rock, where there was a green rock there, and you just didn't do this picture. Doug Forrest interpreted it in a completely different manner.
Yeah, so this is the same moment, but from 180 degrees, different point of view.
Look at this, folks. This is beautiful. It's like a drone, seeing the whole scene there. Tell us more.
Well, this actually came up as an accident. I was originally only going to do the previous picture, but in the research, because I really wanted the environment to be correct, and there were pictures, not of them doing this, but there was a picture of the Mount Hadley behind them, and then this is looking out across the plain into more of the hills across the way. I can't remember the name of the range now.
Hadley Mountain.
Well, that's what's behind them,
Yeah.
but yeah, the ones that were here, because this is actually a downslope. And the interesting thing,
You could feel that from your perspective.
yeah, Jim Irwin had taken a big panorama from above the rock, so from this position. So this is just a slice of that panorama, and I thought, well, the view was so great, I got to do that as well. And when I showed this to Dave Scott, he actually said to me, he says, well, he said, the only thing that I would add to it is you don't see the rover tracks, because the lunar module would be screen left, and we drove in across there, so you'd see them. And I thought to myself, well, no, you don't. And because one of the things he described himself is that the ground was very hummocky, as he put it. Mm-hmm. And so you don't see the tracks because they're hidden. But on the moon, because there's no atmosphere, you have very little depth perception, how far away things are. Everything is pin sharp. And so it fooled him, that because the picture looks like it's flat, but it's actually not. It's really doing this undulating downhill. And so that the fact that I captured that, because I was very careful to make sure every crater was correct, and he can name the craters to this day. He can tell you, oh, that's this one and that's this one. And, I mean, it's amazing. He just looked at it and said, oh yeah, it was.
I believe Dave Scott's 88 years old, one of the 4 moonwalkers who still survived of the 12. What a great story. What great detail, Doug.
Thanks.
From an astronaut there, and how you've interpreted this. Well, let's look at another one of his beautiful pieces of work.
Okay, this is Neil coming down the ladder.
Okay.
And this was really inspired from when they were doing this. Mission Control is saying, we see you at the foot of the ladder. I believe that was Bruce McCandless on his Capcom. And so I called it for the ladder. It's just the moment before, he jumps off down to the pad. And this was a unique perspective. And
that's a pause before Paul Kelly's great moment.
Great moment. That's right. Which I have a copy of.
Great moment.
One of his artist proofs of that is a wonderful painting.
Yeah.
So yes, it is exactly just before that.
Marty?
Just Chris Calley just logged on. He said, Dougie.
Chris Calley just logged on.
Hey, Chris.
Says, Dougie. Hey, Chris. Yes, we're enjoying Doug Forrest here. I think our watchers out there, Marty, agree. This gentleman's got a lot of talent, and the stories that are behind your pictures. Every picture is worth 1,000 words. But when you have the words coming from the subject, and the subject being a moonwalker,
Oh, it was a gift.
do you kind of feel a little bit lucky?
Oh gosh, yeah, it was a gift. As I said, I had planned to meet Dave at Space Fest, and I really wanted to talk to him about other stuff. But when he told me the story of the Green Rock, that was a real gift, and it was such a great story. I just thought I definitely had to do it. It took me months to really figure out how to do it properly.
Well, here's quite an ambitious and well-drawn rendering of the astronauts. Tell us what's going on here, Doug.
Well, this actually is the very first picture I ever did of the Apollo program in my Apollo Arts realm, if you like. And I actually did this for a good friend of mine who took the picture. He was one of the UDT divers. His name was Alan Buehler. And this is Apollo 17, the last mission to the moon.
Gene Cernan there on the left. You can tell the balding Ron Evans there, who's passed away. Gino's gone. And Abby Harrison Schmidt.
Yep.
Sitting there.
That's right.
Bottom. And Harrison's 86 years old.
Yep. And Gene's given my friend Alan the thumbs up. And so I called this job well done. And I actually did this for Alan for Christmas one year. And I met him through eBay, of all places, because
the frogman.
The frogman, yes. Because this is before I'd ever met any of the astronauts. I'd never met any of them. I never thought I was going to. But Alan was originally going to sell the wetsuit that he wore, which was unique for this mission, because these guys, the UDT, were basically the precursors to today's SEALs.
Yes.
And they did
Good
all the
point.
recovery.
Yeah, there were no Navy SEALs back in 1972.
That's right. And so he was selling his wetsuit on eBay, and I put in a bid for it. I didn't get it, but I did get his procedures manual. And after the auction was over, he'd sold it through a third-party company, and I wrote to them and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in Apollo. Would you forward my email to this guy and tell him I'd love to talk to him about the recovery?" And he came back about a week later and said, "Yeah, no problem. Call me Sunday morning." And I interviewed him on the phone. And during the call, he invited me to his home and said, "Hey, I've got all this other stuff connected." He said, "You can come, I'll show you all, and we can talk about it." And he was just a great guy, and we really hit it off. He became a very good friend. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But I did this for Christmas.
His name again?
Alan Buehler.
Alan Buehler?
Yes, I have a whole thing about him on my website. And it has...
And there is his website, apollo/arts.com.
Yep.
Marty, I love this picture. All I see is the thumb up. The way he's composed everything here. Are you drawn to the thumb up there? I am. That's just really a cool picture of Gino there too.
I loved it because it literally this is literally a copy of the photograph, because the photograph had everything in it except the ship, the Ticonderoga.
No, that's a hell of a photograph.
It was just a brilliant picture, and I'm actually. In fact, this week while I was in Florida, I went to the UDT Museum down in Fort Pierce, and I was asking them if there was any way of finding out where the negative of this is. UDT, SEAL Museum. It's in Fort Pierce. And I was trying to find out if they know where the negatives might be, because I would love to get a higher res scan of this photograph.
Excellent. You've got a couple more pictures here. Marty, we got any comments or questions from our friends out there? Pardon me?
Got a few comments, but I was going to wait.
Oh, okay.
You want them
Well, we got it. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Mark Uziak wants to know if you're coming back in October.
I'd love
for
to.
the Attic Parade.
Mark UCAC. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark. I know
Are
Mark.
you coming
Yeah.
back in
He wants to
October?
go to
I'd
Zorro.
like to. It's all going to depend on my job, though.
Yeah.
Well, he wants to take it to the relatives, if that makes a difference.
Well, that's about time.
And William Whiting says, amazing detail in your art, Doug. I love the SEVA piece. There are so many interesting Apollo topics you could draw. What subjects are you planning on drawing in the future?
Well, I've actually got one on the drawing table at home right now, which is a story that Charlie Duke on Apollo 16 has told, not to me personally, but I've heard him tell it several times. Well, tune in.
Yeah, okay, good, all right. That was a question about
It's not done yet.
who's that loves his artwork? Who's that last comment from,
Oh,
Mark?
William Whiting.
William Whiting, yeah.
Okay.
They can't hear Marty very well there till we get another Yeti microphone that we're going to be getting soon, so we can hear more of your questions out there. But well, let's look at a couple other pictures here that I chose just for today's special Stay Curious program. We all know who that is, and unfortunately he passed away before you could talk to him about
Yeah.
it. But there is the great Alan Shepard hitting the famous 6-iron and the McGregor golf ball.
Yes, and again, I was trying to think of things that would be a little different, not just quite as opposed, and I really wanted to do something that was from a different angle, something that people hadn't seen before, even although they'd be familiar with the story. So yes, of course, and I called this
Mission accomplished, I think. There, definitely a great shot there. Gopher's eye view, Marty, of the launch there. I like such detail as you've got his checklist there on his arm, and what kind of research went into this for you?
Well, actually, quite a lot. I mean, I wanted to make sure that everything was in the correct place. So, I mean, you can tell from the video, the TV that they had, it's pretty poor quality, but you can tell where the general things are. You know, the lunar module was there, the high gain antenna that they had out, and Ed Mitchell would have actually been off to the back by the lunar module. He was up over there when this was happening.
He was getting ready to throw a javelin, wasn't he? He was going to throw one of their poles as a javelin thrower.
So there was all that kind of thing, and the lighting.
The golf ball?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the golf ball. And on the lighting, unfortunately, was such that Cone Crater is behind them, and that was, of course, one of the major reasons for going there, was to climb Cone Crater, and. It is in the picture, but it's very dark because of the way the lighting was, and I wanted it to be realistic to the moment.
Well, I think he accomplished that, don't you, Marty?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, yeah. And,
Can you make out his face in the visor? Or is
No,
that a reflection?
that's a reflection.
yeah. So my final choice of your artwork, we have one other obvious choice that's one of your masterpieces, of course, but this one, folks, just blows me away. There was only one stand-up EVA when the lunar module landed on the surface of the moon. This is LM-10 that Marty Winkle he sat on that what David Scott is standing on.
The ascent engine cover.
Yeah, the engine cover for on there. So tell us about this picture. That's just incredible. In fact, Marty and I featured it on a Stay Curious to Stand Up EVA, because the landing was July 31st, and Lee Silvers, the geologist, taught them to go to the highest point in the ground. So here he is, 23 feet up in the air.
Yep.
And with some discussion from Steve Slayton, who objected to this, he did this. So,
There was a whole story. I mean, even the lens, they originally weren't going to let him take the 500 millimeter lens because of the weight, but he convinced them that no, this was important, and they had to do it. And this actually is the picture that I was originally wanting to talk to him about. This is the one that I had when he started telling me about the green rock. But he did give me some additional information that I didn't know, because I had said to him, you know, what was the purpose of doing this? Was it to do a survey, a geological survey before you got out? And he said, well, that was only a part of it. Really, the main reason was because being the first mission to take the rover, they only had photographs taken from orbit of the landing site, and they really couldn't tell from the resolution of those what the boulder field might be like and whether there would be a lot of obstructions to the car. So that was really the point. The main point for him was to be able to have a look around and see what obstacles there would be for driving the rover. As it turned out, it was fine, and it really wasn't that bad. But
visually, he was doing that because
Yep.
there were folks no digital film that he could look at the images he's taken of the
Yeah.
500 millimeter lens. There is Doug Forrest's interpretation of the EVA by David Scott on Apollo 15 on January 31st. Maybe it was the first that they slept. So it'd been August 1st, 1972. And here's the panorama of the photos taken
there you go.
on that stand-up EVA there. Looking around there, there's your the lunar module's high gain antenna and rendezvous antenna. High gain's on the far left there above Doug's head, Marty, and the rendezvous antenna's there in the middle, the saucer. Or do I have it backwards?
I can't make out the one on the left, but that's the rendezvous radar up front.
All right, and Marty had something to do with the electrical wiring on both those things up there. So,
Very cool.
but isn't that neat that here we are? What a striking light! As we all know, they landed in the morning light, so to speak, so they could see a lot of detail in the shadows, and you certainly depicted that there.
Yeah, they always had the shadows towards the ladder because they wanted to. It was for landing purposes, so that they wouldn't be looking into the light while they were trying to land. They always had the shadow out in front of them.
All right. So, and there's your work there, and then the panorama of that magnificent interpretation in pencil. Where were you trained? And what? Tell us a little bit for people interested in pencil sketching. What kind of pencils and charcoal and stuff do you use? But are you formally trained somewhere?
No, I just picked up a pencil when I was little. I mean, being in Scotland in those days,
Really?
it
So
was.
all you with degrees in art just throw them away? No, I'm kidding.
It
No,
was.
I kind of sense that. Yeah.
It was. No, it was. It was a cheap way of doing it. I didn't get into painting because paints cost more, and drawing was easy. I mean, originally I'd be drawing on greaseproof paper and stuff. I wasn't even using pencil originally. As I say, I did a lot of plane aircraft drawings when I was younger. That was something I was into.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I just progressed and
Yeah, Marty, you got a comment?
Yeah, what kind of pencil? Like a number 2 pencil?
What
actually
kind of pencil?
I use a range of pencils. Nowadays, I tend to draw. Probably the hardest is HB, but I go right down to a 9B, which is pretty soft to get the darks. And I also use blending tools, the tortillas, for the paper. They're paper. It's rolled paper that you can smudge it out with, and I do a lot of blending and stuff with that. So I like to try and, because I'm trying to draw it more photorealistically, if you like. And I know that there have been comments about that kind of thing before, but I try and draw the light rather than the lines. So when you get like an edge of something, I'm drawing more of the values rather than the actual line itself, and then filling in the shadows and stuff. And that gives you a more realistic look, for what I'm after. But it's just a style.
Well, and you developed your own style, obviously, but who influenced you?
Well, Paul Calley's awesome. His pencil drawings are incredible. But I mean, I've had some people come up to me and say that they think we were very similar, but we're actually not. If you look very closely at Paul's work, Paul used a lot of
Paul Kelly uses lines,
Lines
directional
and,
lines. He does
incredible.
the smudge and
Oh, it's incredible.
that
How
in
the
there.
detail
And,
he gets doing that is just
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
And actually,
well, the sun's not too bad.
no, I was
too,
going to
but-
say Chris has done
but,
some pretty cool stuff too. Yeah.
But see, Chris can afford all the paints and oil and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, but no, it's just a style. I mean, not being formally trained, I know I picked up a lot of bad habits when I was younger, which I've tried to move away from as I've gotten older, and I've realized what bad habits I did have. I still have some, I'm sure, but yeah, there's definitely it's just open to interpretation, really, how you do it. You know, I tend to think of things as shapes, and you know, everything's got shapes, whether it's the shape of the shadow, whether it's the shape of the actual object itself, or, you know, it's just, that's how I look at things.
And what kind of advice would you give to somebody out there that sees your artwork and says, gee, I'd like to try to be like Doug?
Well, just draw a lot. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I when I was a kid, I mean, I wasn't drawing to the level I'm drawing now by any means. You know, but I tell my son this. He's 17 and he's starting to draw, and he's actually doing it more formally than I ever did. He's actually doing online classes for what's the word, anatomy, and stuff like that. So he's trying to learn it properly. But I keep telling him, you know, you've actually got to do the drawings. You can't just do studies all the time. You got to actually start doing drawings. And you know, his kind of comment of, well, it's not going to be good enough. Well, it's always good enough at the point you're at, and that's the thing. Because art is, you know, there's no such thing as that's better than that. It's just different, and that's a really important thing to remember. And
evolving all the time.
Evolving
be
all
satisfied
the
with
time.
you're at and look
Yep.
for the next level.
Exactly. And just, you know, you can be self-critical, and it's okay for other people to be critical too, as long as they do it in a constructive way.
Correct. Yes.
And that's important, actually, because you get someone's point of view as well, and that can influence you greatly.
Good. Marty, we have a comment.
Yeah, Chris Calley says, Paul Calley's advice was simply to draw, and keep drawing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris Kelly saying his dad's advice was draw, and keep drawing.
That's so true.
And
That's so true.
well, we're glad that you've enjoyed this Stay Curious. Mark Usiak and Tom Usiak. We had them in our studio last week. They're safely back in the Amish country of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They brought me a shoe fly pie, by the way, that was delicious. Mostly, I think it's just stirred up brown sugar, but it was good. Dave Stengy's watching us up in Michigan. Why don't you give a shout out to a few people there?
Stephen Josham,
Okay.
Josham, Brad McKinnon. I'm not sure of the right thing here.
Kumar, I'll take that one.
Okay. Bennett Scarborough, Ben Hussett, Chris Calley, of course, William Whiting, Martha Sprusenberg,
Thanks for
that
watching,
right?
Martha.
and Cliff Watson.
Cliff Watson's down in down under
Okay.
in Australia. The chap I was saying about down under, an astronomy buddy of mine. Hi, Cliff. And it's already Thursday where Cliff's at, so
That's right, yeah.
it's been a short week with us going in there.
Yeah, my parents are in New Zealand.
Are they?
Yeah,
Your parents are in New Zealand?
And my
What town
sister.
in New Zealand?
Hamilton.
Hamilton. There you go, Cliff. Yeah, he knows where Hamilton is, I'm sure, New Zealand. Well, one more wonderful masterpiece from our wonderful artist here, Doug Forrest. Let's show this one there that we featured when we talked about, we featured this as our green screen with the Apollo 1 Foundation, Bob Castro. Had a program with Bob, who's in town for Artemis. So you found a color pencil, it looks like.
Yes, I found a yes. It's literally the only
That's
picture
in
of
the
mine
color.
in color. Yeah. Well, I felt it was important to make the flag color. It focuses the point of the picture. The picture is called "In Their Honor," and while I was drawing this is another one that just was just great timing. I within the time that I was drawing this, I was watching a documentary about Apollo 8, and mission controller Jerry Bostic was talking about, after the Apollo fire, how they had really redoubled their efforts, and they really wanted to do it because these guys were their friends, and it was more personal to them, and they wanted to get it done. They wanted to get it done within Kennedy's timeline and do it in their honor. And I just thought, oh, that's perfect for my picture, which I wasn't, I was just watching this thing. And so I saw Jerry at Space Fest, and I showed him this, and I said, Jerry, I called this because of what you said. And I think he was quite moved, which was great. It was a nice moment, and
Wow.
I think he was quite chuffed that I'd done that.
Beautiful tribute to our Apollo 1 heroes, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee there. And that could be any of the lunar landings.
But it is
Apollo 11.
an iconic moment with Buzz Aldrin saluting the flag, and it really, because it was the first landing, I figured it was okay to do that.
You know what you depicted there, Doug, for me, that tells me it's the first landing, is the solar experiment there on the left.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very good, very good. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Doug Forrest. We're so happy to make him as a new friend. Hashiko, his wife's here in the room. We know that they'll be back and support our museum. Marty, another comment?
Yeah, Mark Usiak wants to know, Mark, have you shown Doug your etchings?
Yes, he has.
Oh, okay. And I threw my pencils in the ocean after seeing his.
No.
Between Chris and Paul
No.
Cowley and you guys.
We've been practicing.
Thank you, Mark Usiak. I do. I have kind of taken up sketching a little bit there. I find it very relaxing and therapeutic.
It is.
And after spending 50 years and making a living as a photographer for 20 of that, everyone's a photographer today. So Daniel DeYoung and Daniel's watching there. DeYoung and Child Can. Thanks for watching, Daniel. He's flies these gigantic planes around the country there, and we saw him here. But yes, it's. Thank you for the mention there, Mark Usiak. It's fun to draw. It's incredible how serious it can be. I mean, really, on a level of art, people, when you see how you've taken it to that level, boy, a lot of time involved in each.
A lot
image.
of time, yeah. I mean, I average between. I think the quickest one is because I do kind of clock in and out when I draw. When I sit down to draw, I have a little pad and I write down the time, so I know how long it's taken me to draw each one. Because I'm not sitting down and just doing the picture. It takes me weeks to do most of them. Maybe an hour here, 2 hours there, half hour there. And so I write out how long it's taken. So I think the longest one is about 90 hours, and the quickest is about 24.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know what Chris Cowley, when you ask him how long that picture took him to do, you know what Chris says? A lifetime of drawing and learning.
You're right.
Not no 90 hours. If you said, it took me 90 minutes, and someone said, well, why you are charging me $500 for it? So
Right, yes, of course.
your artwork is for sale there at yourapolloarts.com.
Yes, it is.
And people, you want to check his website out. It's a beautiful website. Good, well
Thank
done. You got your nice bio on there, and you're one of these people that you're hoping that to have some sort of an impact in the memory of Apollo.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to tell the stories. I'm not. Alan Bean, again, who's Apollo 12. He was an artist, and that was his thing, was to tell the stories of what he and his colleagues had done, and I'm not trying to take over that man's by any means, but I'm trying to do it from my perspective. I mean, he walked in them, and that's a totally different thing. But I want to try and bring the excitement and the passion I felt for it at the time, and still do. I'm really looking forward to Artemis going back to the moon, or any of them going back to the moon. And it's just such an important thing for us to do.
Well, you certainly have found your niche in the Apollo era. Marty and I, of course, love that. We're only 6 moon landings, and we always love talking about it because we're 50 years removed from the last time we did it. And you have kept the memory fresh here with some fresh perspectives, I believe.
Well, I think it's one of the most important things we've ever done as a race, because, I mean, it wasn't a war, but people came together. The whole planet came together when Apollo 11 landed, even the Russians. I mean, it was amazing.
Well,
right?
President Nixon, talking to the astronauts on the surface of the moon, one thing he said in his speech to them was that for one single moment, the civilized world of the Earth was focused on one thing.
Exactly.
And that was them landing on the moon.
Yeah.
And name something else where the entire world is glued to a television set or a radio or to get these primitive images and radio signals back 240,000 miles away.
And it's not a war.
And it's not a war.
Yeah.
And being European, yes, I can see why you think, World War II is always fresh in the memory of Europeans, particularly in the UK. So, Doug, fabulous.
Thank you.
To meet you, and
too.
honored to share your beautiful artwork on Stay Curious. We can't wait to have you back again. We'll talk about
Absolutely.
you many times in the future until you do. Marty, thank you for a wonderful program on our Streamlabs program here today, how we do it. And Friday, we're going to have Mike Leinbach to talk Artemis. Mike was the last launch director of the space shuttle, and we want to get his perspective on being an actual launch director and not a Google rocket scientist out there trying to make under or overthink all of this on the Artemis, because they're going to go when they're ready to go, despite what the problems are. So Friday's Mike Leinbach, and tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to have Eurocom Alex Carl. He is the talks to the ESA astronauts. Christopher Reddy's up there now on the International Space Station. Good friend of ours, Alex Carl, will be on our show tomorrow. So until then, I'm Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.